Hello, this is Todd Danielson, the editorial director of Informed Infrastructure. During Bentley Systems' 2020 virtual Year in Infrastructure event, I was able to webcam interview the company's new Chief Success Officer, Katriona Lord-Levins. Since this was her first week into the job, we started the interview asking about her previous background and work history.
My background comes from, obviously I grew up in Ireland and moved to Canada and went to university in Canada to do computer science at a time just because there wasn't any reason why other than the fact that it seemed like a logical system, and I was curious as to what computers really were back then. Believe it or not, it wasn't like they were mainstream for me at least. I immediately went into a company called Alias Research in my last year of university, joined them. They were a startup at the time doing animation and design software in Toronto. Focused on, they were some of the bleeding edge on the animation, gaming communities, etc. And it was a great place to cut your teeth, if you will, in a world at that time when everybody was, it was such a green field. There was so much opportunity out there. I worked with Autodesk through many different, or with Alias, sorry, through many different jobs as project managers, product managers. Maya was one of mine. As an early product manager, and then they were purchased by Autodesk about 17 years ago or so. And one of the roles that I was doing and really enjoyed doing at Alias was around creating the whole support and services experience and really representing the customer. For some reason, I naturally fit into the world of, what problem are they trying to solve, and try to step into their shoes. And so transitioning over into Autodesk, it was a logical place to do customer success before it became a buzzword. And it was really about trying to represent there's a lot of mindsets around, product managers having bright, shiny objects and a problem that they're seeking to solve. And then they look for the problem to fit that. So they come up with a solution and they retrofit it. And I was always the voice in the room that was kind of going, well, hold on a second. Have we even asked them? Have we gone out to see what people are really doing? And so I did a lot of that mindset within Autodesk and started up their customer success organization. In the last couple of years I was there, we moved off into split the business into construction they were new into construction side of the house. So spent a lot of time setting up the success organization to try and break ground on the construction world. And then left there last September or so, and I started doing consulting and going out and working with other companies to do success. And Greg approached me and asked me if I would consider coming back into the corporate world, which I have to say I did consult with Bentley at first, and I just fell in love with Bentley and Greg's mindset. He is definitely a user-focused mindset. It tells him the tools and he cares about solving the problems, and it's not just lip service. Without a doubt, it is the place that I felt most at home for trying to do what I like best, which is represent the voice of the customer within a company.
Okay, the next question you probably get every single time, but what is a Chief Success Officer, and how do you see this role at Bentley?
Yeah. So look, a Chief Success Officer is the latest buzzword. It really is representing the customer within the company and ensuring that our users are successful. I'll tell you that my mandate out of the gate is having this relentless focus on creating loyal users. And the how that we do that is making sure that they're actually realizing their business goals with what we're doing. And how we're going to do that is largely around, metrics drive behavior. So shifting our metrics to actually deliver proven outcomes. What does that mean? It means understanding our users, knowing who they are, what's the persona that's behind them, what problem are they seeking to solve, and be able to almost get ahead of it and say to them, by doing this, here's a proven outcome that we believe you can have, either in saving, it's either safety, security, it's resources, it's money, it's by getting more business, whatever it is as a proven outcome, we want to say to them, here's what we will do with you, and here's what a proven outcome is. Now, there's a bit of skin in the game. It's always success to me as a partnership with our accounts. And it's about saying to them, here's what we're going to do with you, and here's what you're going to do with us. It's about, transitioning from that vendor type mindset and saying the partnership means that, you're going to identify champions and people and put time down for people to learn and move along this path. And in the learning curve, the forgetting curve component, what are we going to do to actually reach these joint business goals and check in on success along that? So it's really about having measured successes with proven engagements, like not vaporware, but things we're going to do with you together. And we know enough about your industry, we know enough about your peers in the world that we can bring you best practices as well. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I'm just a little follow-up. Since you've got chief in your title, are you going to be interfacing with customers directly, or is your role to more catch your colleagues up to speed so that they can be better prepared to interact with the customers more directly?
Yeah, so I'll do both, because I have to talk to customers. I mean, that's just who I am. I need to get out and actually really ask them hear what they have to say. I want to hear the hard pieces of the business, not the soft, fluffy ones. But my team's goal is to do both the listening and the providing of the services to actually drive adoption. So there's a user success team behind it. However, within Bentley, my job is to amplify the voice of the customer. It is to, one of the things that I'm most proud of that I've built over my time frame is a voice of the customer program, a very clear program where we put listening posts into different parts of a customer's journey. It's about asking early enough, knowing what good looks like, asking them early enough how things are going and watching what they're doing, and being able to use that as a sort of a scorecard, if you will, to be predictive on either how the projects will go. I mean, it's a little bit like you saying the false starts on people being BIM orientated. Having enough knowledge to drive into their data and see how they're using things to come back and say, so you think you're BIM, let me show you where you're mostly 2D and there's pockets of 3D over here and pockets of excellence. So let's drill into those pockets of excellence and see how can we span that across your company. So act as a trusted advisor for the company, but internally within Bentley, be the continuous dogged voice of the customer and make sure that the big issues are what we're focusing on. It's not always about the bright, shiny objects, but sometimes it's about baking the cake before we ice it.
So with your work history, obviously you've been very familiar with Bentley and you did some consulting with them before you took the job. What was it about your past experience in that consulting that made you decide to go ahead and accept this position?
So I didn't honestly think that I'd go back into absolute corporate world. I'll be honest with you, I really didn't. I was enjoying the sort of the getting in SEAL Team 6 and sort of helping inject success into companies. And then I met Greg. And quite frankly, it was I hadn't come across someone with his mindset before inside of a corporate company, to be so driven by wanting to solve users' problems, like truly getting ahead of them, and not just in not just in a reactive way, like not just when they come to us react to it, but be more proactive and get ahead of what their problems could be and how can we help them be more successful. And I think that's always been part of the way he thinks in building his products. And so taking a non-engineering mindset, so I have a non-engineering mindset, so it's not always about the tools providing the solutions, but sometimes there's the softer side of the tools. So the tools can do the job, but how do we, to your point on, I think you said it was 30% within the construction world from an adoption perspective, how do we take those late stage employees, people who are used to paper and pencil, and how do we digitize their world? How do we transition that gap with softer skills, trainings, showing them best practices, helping them navigate those waters? And so that's what I bring to the other side of what I think is Greg's very solution orientated view on success. But it is definitely Greg and his leadership team that brought me in, without a doubt.
Do you have an example of maybe something he said that clicked on you, that it's like, oh, that's different. This might get me to change my mind?
It was over a course. I consulted for 6 months, and it wasn't his words, just his words. It was the fact that he was consistent and he followed through with what he was saying. So it was actually more of his actions that I was watching. It was how he was willing to realign and get behind the changes that we would have to make to get where we needed to be able to walk alongside the accounts as a trusted advisor. It was more over time, seeing that it wasn't just lip service. So it was the proof being in the pudding. I don't have a concrete example without breaking apart all the processes that I went through to do this, but I will tell you that, so maybe it is the fact that he was very keen on, the first thing was getting this voice of the customer program up and running, being very, very important for him to hear exactly the raw truth of what the customers were saying. He really wanted to get engaged in that himself, and to align metrics internally to whether you want to say it's a compensation thing internally, but to align the metrics internally to say, we're going to actually care about our customers enough to actually pay incentives based on it. Does that make sense?
I don't know exactly how long you've been an official employee, but what would you say your outlook is? I'm thinking maybe in the first 6 months as you're new to the year, and how far out are you even looking at what you're trying to do?
So I tend to do a Horizon 1 and Horizon 3. I kind of to sort of stays more nebulous than Horizon 3 because I know where I want to go. So what's my North Star and where we want to get to? Right now, it is very much about it's finding the muscle. So finding the muscle to, obviously we have great engagement with our big enterprise accounts, and you can see that in the amount of years that accounts stay with Bentley. What I'm very interested in as well is the smaller accounts, and how do we take the learnings that the big guys have out there and bring it down into the smaller accounts as well. So building out, so my short-term gain is actually having great engagement on both ends of the pyramid, if you will. So what are we doing with our enterprise accounts? Obviously, everybody really invests in them, but also what are we doing to help? And help in a scalable way. People don't necessarily want somebody on the phone with them all the time. People don't want, they don't want you showing up on their doorstep. They don't want to necessarily have to think about setting aside time to talk to a success person. But what they do want is they want just-in-time learning. They want to have access to curated learning when I have time to sit down and do a course of something and get an accreditation at the end of it. But at the same time, I want to, right this minute, I have to do this one task. Where can I go to find the steps to take me through that? So building out some of this self-serve, just-in-time engagements, and watching the accounts from the sidelines and jumping in when we can in a more proactive way. So building out that organization, developing the muscle around engaging with our smaller accounts, and creating a lot of this self-serve just-in-time engagement from a training and learning perspective. As we move down the pipe, I mean, I fully see that, from a user success perspective, the future of success in general is very much around how much can happen from within a product, how much can be AI driven and or based on, I know you as a user, here's some things that are interesting to you before you need to even ask me about it, before you have to leave the product to learn more about it. So get more intuitive and use user success to sort of feed and to lay that groundwork.
So you've been there for at least a week. Do you have any particular highlights in your first week? And what did you think about the first virtual Year in Infrastructure conference?
I loved the virtual Year in. I think what I like the most is the fact that there's serious learning, but there's also, let's not take ourselves too seriously. You know, there's the saving lives type of thing. So I think in the world, so this is a unique year overall for everybody. People have had to shift to the work from home. The beginning was interesting for people. It was kind of cool. I get to work from home. I don't have a commute. Look at me. I'm doing all great things. And then it wears on people over time. And we're at that tipping point right now where I think we're wearing on people with we want to get back. We need to social. We're Homo sapiens. We need to be engaged with other people and have conversations. And so there is a little bit of that tipping point happening. And I think Year in Infrastructure actually did a good job on not taking ourselves too seriously as well, and break the ground, but at the same time show some interesting things to make people excited about the tomorrow. I think in a virtual world where the water cooler, in these conferences, the water cooler or the corridor conversations are not happening. I think that there was a lot more one-on-one engagement around them to try and facilitate that feel. My first week in general, I think it's like we're running fast. I mean, there is no time there's no time to sleep yet. Maybe next year, but not this year. So it's exciting. It feels like a startup, which is really funny in a 36-year-old company, but it really does feel it's an exciting place to be. It's a good time to be, maybe.
Okay, I'd like to step back away from Bentley a little bit and kind of get your thoughts on the AEC industry as a whole. How do you think it's doing, its health? What are some of the directions it's going that are positive or negative? And how do you feel about the overall industry?
Yeah. So I'm going to say, I probably say all the time, I'm going to be the least technical person you ever probably talk to at Bentley, and that's by design, because I want to see the forest for the trees as well, and sort of look for new ways of engaging. One of the things that I do want to put out there is when we look at success, user engagement and user success overall, we're not competing with our direct competitors. And when you think about the AEC space, we're not actually competing with any of the big names that are standing around us. We're competing with anybody else. We're competing with everybody on the iPhone that our users are interacting with. We're competing for an experience. And I think that's the thing that we have to get more. And it's why, when I talk about looking at the forest for the trees, I'm looking for ways to see habits that people are falling into, and how do I enable or disable that habit if it's a good one. I'll give you an example. In the construction world, somebody's out on the site, they're using whatever tools that they're using to try and digitize their workflows, but they're running into problems, and they're disconnected from the turning around to somebody in their desk. They don't have the usual engagement. So, do we switch to a WhatsApp way of having them be able to always get in contact with an expert to solve a problem for them? But I do think that there's a lot to learn from the gaming industries. There's a lot to learn from, you see people moving into this AR world. You see all of the adoption of the new technologies that are still on the bleeding edge and not quite breaking it into mainstream. But I do think that's the way that we need to be moving to move fast enough within this. I honestly don't think we are moving fast enough. I think we have a lot of people that are still digging their heels in, it's like you say, somebody once said to me about Disney, of all things, in China, the big issue that companies always say is security of their data. And Disney, when they were building in Shanghai, some of the buildings that they were doing, they would move their drawings around on a bicycle under somebody's arm. And so we have this dichotomy of fighting against, we can't possibly digitize because of security, but we're not very secure on our paper and pencil methods either. And I think, again, showing people the story behind that will help to transition into why digitizing is the way to go to get more done.